Okay, in part 4, we're now looking at traditional ethical assumptions. So we need to assume that ethics are rational, that they're not irrational when we're dealing with them, that we have something that we can believe in at the end of the day, and that it is rational. We also have to assume that ethical actions are impartial. So again, that's what I was talking about earlier in getting rid of your biases, getting rid of your prejudices, and be able to approach the problem objectively. So it's assumed that we do start in an impartial way. We also assume that the principles are universal or can be made into universals. So in other words, it's not that when we think about an ethical issue, is it truly necessarily just for me? Again, that's the moral relativism. Instead, we want to say, for example, still going with the murder analogy, the value of a human life, we want to look at that as if it were made into a universal standard to be applied across the board to everyone on Earth. We want to look at the bigger picture, not necessarily the smaller picture. Applied ethics is where we go in and necessarily start looking at the small picture, but here we're going to be looking at the big picture. So we're assuming that our ideas that we come to can be made into universals. Some ethical terminology. A moral agent is someone who can be held responsible for his actions. In other words, the person has free will, they have the knowledge that is necessary, and they are able to reason. So all of you meet the standard. You each have free will to choose one conclusion or another, to formulate arguments pro and con against different things. You have the knowledge that I'm building and giving you now with looking at ethical issues. How do we do it? And when you get through with these lectures, then you will have a basic understanding of how to go about approaching a problem ethically. And obviously you're in college, you all have the ability to reason, to think through a particular argument. A morally significant being is a being who merits moral consideration. Note, I say one need not be a moral agent to be morally significant. So, again, we can look at issues as a moral agent. Again, we have free will, we have knowledge, and we have reason, and we can look at it about a being who merits moral consideration. So an example would be animal cruelty, that we can still, as moral agents, look and debate the issue of whether it's ethical or not, even though the person we're talking about or the animal we're talking about doesn't meet all of the characteristics for a moral agent. A morally significant action is an action that has moral meaning or value. So notice that we're now saying the agent, the being, and the action, these all have to have some kind of definition that we can stick to and say these are the people who are looking at the problem, these are the people affected by the problem, and what we're doing has some kind of meaning or value.